Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to discuss why I don't feel that the World of Hyatt program is really great anymore. Now, the World of Hyatt program is a fan favorite to many people in the points and miles game. If you want to stay at top tier hotels for cheap, well, redeeming your Hyatt points or your Chase Ultimate Reward points with Hyatt is going to be the best way to be able to do that. I've been a fanboy of the World of Hyatt program for some time now, and I still think that it is really good, but I don't think that it's the greatest thing out there anymore. This year, I've looked at Hyatt a lot differently. Now, I've been a globalist each year since 2021. Back in 2021, Hyatt had this super easy way to achieve globalist, and I got globalist from organic stays about halfway through the year. And I was already a big fan of the World of Hyatt program, but when they started adding in, giving me room upgrades to suites, and then also getting myself drink vouchers along with free breakfast, different gifts, and more from the World of Hyatt program, I completely fell in love with them. Not only were they treating me really well, but it wasn't very difficult for me to come by Hyatt points. I would either get myself Hyatt points from using my Hyatt credit card during paid stays, or I would get different Chase Ultimate Reward cards and then transfer over those points that I earned from those cards over to my World of Hyatt account. What you learn from the World of Hyatt program is that it doesn't take that many points to get yourself a really luxurious stay. In 2021, I thought that the World of Hyatt program was leaps and bounds above any other hotel program out there. Now, in 2024, I still think that they are the top dog, but the competition is becoming a lot closer. Outside of the cheaper award redemptions, the World of Hyatt program does a couple things that points and miles enthusiasts really love. And this is going to be that they have an award chart, and then also they announce their devaluations. These two things keep Hyatt in the good graces of points and miles bloggers, content creators, and just enthusiasts of the points and miles game. Award charts is what everyone is looking for who's deeper in the points and miles game. It is great because they have a fixed rate for how many points it's going to cost for a specific award, regardless of what the cash fare ends up being. So if you happen to be looking to go to, say for instance, Mexico City, but you're looking to go during Mexican Independence Day, well, the cost to stay at certain Hyatt properties may end up being really expensive, but the points cost may end up being incredibly low. The second thing is announcing devaluations. Hyatt is a program that announces their devaluations, and they give you ample time to redeem your points at the current cost before they end up making their changes. This is pretty generous for them because many other points and miles programs don't announce their devaluations. Avianca, you've been saving points and miles for a specific award, and then out of nowhere, this award becomes 60% more expensive. This can be incredibly frustrating, so to get alerted beforehand is nice. But just because Hyatt does these two things doesn't mean that we should give them a pass when they do massive devaluations. And I've been looking at different award programs over the past few years and the different changes that they've done, and I don't know if there's been very many that have done as big of devaluations as the World of Hyatt has. Sure, there are some programs out there that have devalued their programs to the point of not being competitive anymore. Hyatt definitely hasn't done that, but Hyatt has done an enormous amount of devaluations over the past 4 years. And Hyatt went from being, in my opinion, in a league of its own to not very far ahead of the competition. If you go back to 2020, Hyatt only had category 1 through 7. They had category 1 costing 5,000 points a night, and then category 7 costing 30,000 points a night. And then Hyatt decided to add category 8, but Hyatt said that they were only going to put small luxury hotels of the world properties in category 8, and Hyatt branded hotels would not be added in there. Well, they ended up adding in Hyatt branded hotels. And not only did they add in Hyatt branded hotels, they also added in peak and off-peak pricing. Now, some people may have noticed that Hyatt added in peak and off-peak pricing, and you may not have thought of it as being a devaluation, but I do. And the reason why is because if you look at a property, say for instance, like the Park Hyatt in New York, where 2 years ago, this was a category 7 property, and it cost you 30,000 points a night to stay there. Well, now this property has been bumped up being a category 8, and there are many days where if you want to stay there, it's going to be during peak times, which means that it's going to cost you 45,000 points a night to stay at this property. That is a 50% increase in points from 2 years ago to stay at this property. The Thompson Hotel in Madrid is a beautiful property that I stayed at last year, and at the time it was a category 4 hotel, and it cost me 15,000 points a night to stay there. Well, now this property has been bumped up to being a category 6, and if you go during peak times, it would cost you 29,000 points a night to stay there. That is almost a 100% increase from just a year ago. Can you imagine if a popular airline added a new award and then increased this award close to 100% after a year of it being available? How much people would be freaking out about that? People would start shunning this airline. But not with Hyatt. Because Hyatt announced it beforehand, Hyatt gets a pass. And I'm not just cherry picking here. Many of Hyatt's popular properties have moved up in categories, such as like the Andaz out in Costa Rica, or a property that I liked, which was the Park Hyatt in Istanbul, that was a category 4 when I stayed there, and now is a category 6. Hyatt changed last year 183 different properties into different categories. And out of those 183 different properties, they moved 137 of them up in category. Now these devaluations annoy me, but not enough to not want to stay with Hyatt. But I do wonder, with all these devaluations, why does Hyatt still get as much love as it does? I think it goes back to the public award chart. If you look at something like Hyatt as compared to Hilton, both programs have award charts. Hilton just doesn't have a public award chart. If Hyatt ends up making any changes, well, you can end up seeing it to where you know how much it is going to cost to go to this property. Whereas with Hilton, even though they do have a secret award chart, you're not going to know if any changes are going to happen unless you happen to just be searching for the property and notice that the standard room has increased in pricing. The way that you know that Hilton has a secret award chart is because if you look at different Hilton properties week after week or month after month, you notice that the standard room price doesn't end up changing. So although there is an award chart internal with Hilton, there isn't one that is public for us to be able to look at, to be able to compare to Hyatt. But I actually am surprised at how many people who are invested into the points and miles game that someone hasn't broken down and made their own Hilton award chart and then shared it to the public. Now, what really made me decide to make this video about Hyatt is that I was recently reading on Hyatt's Reddit page, and there was a gentleman who got a corporate challenge to be able to get themselves Globalist if they stayed 20 nights at a Hyatt property over the next 90 days. Now this person had no Hyatt stays already booked and they didn't have any plan to be booked, so what they decided to do, because they really wanted to get Globalist, was they did a mattress run for Globalist for all 20 nights just to be able to reach Hyatt's top tier status. All I was thinking when I was reading this was, whatever amount of gains this person believes they're going to be getting is going to be completely negated, if not be in the negative, because of doing this insane mattress run. If I remember correctly, this person said that they're going to be spending 90,000 points to be able to do this mattress run. Now you could value 90,000 World of Hyatt points anywhere between being $1,500 all the way up to $2,000 worth of value. To me, while becoming Globalist is valuable, I would not pay that amount to get Globalist. In fact, I believe that the milestone ladder of getting to Globalist is more valuable than Globalist itself. And if you aren't getting those milestone awards, which this person would not be getting if they were only doing the corporate challenge, then I don't think Globalist is really that special. I would love to ask Globalist which one they value more, the milestones of achieving Globalist or Globalist itself. Because I bet you that it's probably close to 50-50 on which one they find to be more valuable. That is how valuable those milestones awards are. Now on this channel, I talk about being a Globalist and how much I do enjoy the perks of the status. But if you think that 90,000 points to achieve Globalist without getting the milestone awards is going to be worth it because of how much value you're going to be getting from Globalist, then I think you're getting tricked into believing that Globalist is a lot more valuable than it actually is. And I also wonder, how is it someone who loves Hyatt so much and values Globalist at such a high level have no organic stays over the next 90 days? It seems to me that for some people, telling everyone that you're a Globalist is more important than what you actually are going to be getting as a Globalist. If you want status, get yourself the Hilton Aspire or Surpass card, and I bet you will come out ahead. The marketing of these banks and these programs is really strong, and the fear of missing out and not being an elite is absolutely crazy. I don't know how often people who aren't Globalists believe that someone like myself who is a Globalist gets upgraded to a suite. Well, it's not as often as you may think. In 2024, I've been upgraded to one suite this year that I didn't already book beforehand. And that was at the Dreams Hotel that I stayed in Nashville. It was a nice room with a lot of space, and I'm very thankful for the upgrade, but I don't expect upgrades to suites with Hyatt anymore. I do pretty much always get upgraded to a nicer room than what I originally booked, but getting suite upgrades has become few and far between. What I do when I want a suite is I use the suite upgrade award that I get from climbing up the Hyatt milestone ladder. And while these are very valuable awards, Anyone out there who is a globalist will tell you these things have become harder to use year after year. And the reason is either because there are becoming more globalists out there, or because hotels are playing tricks that are making it really difficult to be able to use these awards. And while I have been treated incredibly well as a globalist for my Hyatt stays, you don't need to have globalists to be treated nicely at properties. My stay in Osaka showed me that when I stayed at the Conrad and I only had simple gold status with Hilton. I got myself a room upgrade. I also had a gift in my room, which was the local sake. I had a fantastic time staying there. And the free breakfast benefit that you get as a globalist, I find to be more valuable in the States than I do overseas. And the reason for this is because if you happen to travel overseas and go to these different hotels, you may have noticed that a lot of times for breakfast, it is buffet style, whereas here you end up having maybe an optional buffet or an option for a menu to be able to order your breakfast. So if you happen to have just simple Hilton Gold status and they have buffet style, chances are this is going to be the breakfast that you're going to be offered, and it's going to be very similar to what a Hyatt property of the same caliber is going to be offered as a globalist. The difference is, to get yourself Hilton Gold status, you can simply get yourself the Hilton Surpass card, or you can also get it just from having the American Express Platinum card. Now, I do value a good free breakfast, and I will admit that Hyatt is more consistent with offering you a good free breakfast as compared to other hotel programs out there. My first day in Nashville, before moving over to the Dreams Hotel that's part of Hyatt's program, I stayed at a random hotel to use up my $150 hotel credit that's connected with the Delta Business Gold Card. And this hotel that I stayed at said that they offered free breakfast. Well, in the morning when I came down to get free breakfast, they gave me some Fruit Loops and some orange juice. I will admit that I was incredibly disappointed with that breakfast. And when I went over to the Dreams Hotel with Hyatt, they did offer me a menu, and the breakfast there was pretty darn good. And as I said at the top of this video, Hyatt still is a really good program, and I'm not making this video to make people run away from Hyatt. All I'm saying is that if you compare Hyatt to what it was as to now what it is, it has went down and it shouldn't be on the pedestal that it was a few years ago. One of my biggest frustrations in recent times with Hyatt was the loss of the small luxury hotels of the World Partnership and the MGM Partnership, and then the acquisition of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. This change really had me questioning my loyalty to World of Hyatt. When Hyatt was partnered with the small luxury hotels, they didn't always offer the best prices for awards, but they did have some really cool hotels that you could stay at, and also it did help increase Hyatt's small footprint. And then when it comes to MGM, again, the award prices weren't crazy, but if you wanted to go over to Vegas, this could end up being a great way to save yourself on resort fees and a number of different things if you happen to have higher tier status with Hyatt, or if you just want to redeem your points at a MGM property out in Las Vegas. When Hyatt lost both of these partnerships, you get to really see just how small Hyatt's footprint is and how limited it is when you're trying to stay at different properties around the world and be loyal to them. Like when I went to visit Fiji, I tried to stay at a Hyatt property because I wanted to be loyal to the World of Hyatt program, and they did have a property over there, although it was a small luxury hotels of the world, which Hyatt is no longer partnered with, but at the time they were partnered with them. And for me to stay at this property, it was going to be a 3-hour drive from the airport. And as much as I like Hyatt, I'm not about to spend 6 hours round trip to go to this Hyatt property that's on the other side of this island. Instead, I stayed at a perfectly fine Hilton property that was only 15 minutes from the airport. Convenience is huge to me, and there's no way I want to be worrying the day of my departure from Fiji if I'm going to make it to the airport in time from a 3-hour drive on this tropical island. Small Luxury Hotels of the World is now partnered with Hilton, and from what I've seen, if you want to stay at some of their more aspirational properties, the award prices are very competitive. And what Hyatt got in place of them and what they hyped up was the acquisition of Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Now, I don't want to knock any of the hotels on Mr. and Mrs. Smith because those properties actually seem like they're perfectly fine. But to redeem your World of Hyatt points for a Mr. and Mrs. Smith property is going to be a terrible decision. Because if you want to redeem them, what I've seen is that you're going to be getting yourself somewhere along the lines of either 0.8 cents per point or to like 1.2 cents per point. This is not the value that most people are seeking for the World of Hyatt points. Typically, they imagine that they're going to be getting themselves somewhere above 2 cents per point if they're just looking on average with redeeming with Hyatt's properties. In fact, at such a low point redemption value, If you want to grab onto your Chase Ultimate Reward points to stay at a Mr. and Mrs. Smith property, it would probably end up being smarter to just cash out those Chase Ultimate Reward points and then use that cash to book the stay instead of transferring over to your World of Hyatt account. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties have essentially become the IHG of Hyatt. Now I get that Hyatt doesn't own these properties, they only own the booking platform, but Hyatt didn't own SLH or MGM, and you seem to be able to make award bookings with those programs without it end up being a terrible deal. But it doesn't make any sense to grab onto your World of Hyatt points and then redeem them with a Mr. and Mrs. Smith property. I have yet to find or see anyone post about one Mr. and Mrs. Smith property that is going to make sense to use your World of Hyatt points for redemption at that place. The Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties do not follow Hyatt's award chart, and I understand that maybe they should get themselves their own different award chart. That would work out better for me than the dynamic pricing. But what annoys me the most about these Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties is how much they end up littering the different searches when you are trying to look at a map for Hyatt properties that you want to stay at in a certain location. Because what you'll notice is that all of a sudden there's many different properties that are there, and then when you click on them, they're going to cost 93,000 points a night to be able to stay at this property. Now, pretty much every single time that I search on Hyatt's website and I'm using their map feature, what I end up doing is I grab onto the filters and I make it so that I can see every single property except for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because it just ends up flooding it with properties that I do not wish to redeem my points with. And when you end up filtering out all the Mr. and Mrs. Smith properties, you again get to see just how small Hyatt's footprint really is. One of the reasons we rave about the World of Hyatt is because in this game of points and miles, what you're looking to do is get yourself good value, but also not have to pay cash out of pocket. The only program that people feel confident in that they can transfer over their transferable currencies to, where they can also stay at aspirational properties and get themselves good value for, is the World of Hyatt. While airline miles may be able to get you 6 cents per point in value or more for their redemptions, you're almost never going to be able to get that with hotel stays. But the closest thing you could possibly get that with is going to be with the Hyatt program. We all need a place to stay when we're traveling, and if you're looking to do luxury travel and you need a hotel to stay at, Hyatt still does offer the best deals. If you ask most points and miles enthusiasts what they think about transferring their American Express membership reward points over to something like the Hilton program, most of them will tell you that it's not worth doing it. And even myself, I would say that at a 1-to-2 ratio, which is what Amex does just as a normal transfer with American Express membership reward points over to Hilton, I don't also think that it's worth it. But as the transfer bonus does get higher, I think that the math ends up becoming a lot closer with American Express transferring over to Hilton as being a competitive transfer partner. Hilton has one time offered a 1-to-3 transfer ratio from American Express over to Hilton a few years ago, and I think at that ratio, it isn't a bad rate to transfer over to. If you look at something like the 5th night free as well, which I do know is more limited, but it can end up making it a pretty good deal if you look at a lot of the different Hilton properties. The way I would think of it is like this. If you look at getting yourself a higher Hilton transfer bonus, if you compare it to looking at something like transferring over your Chase Ultimate Reward points over to Hyatt, if you were to transfer over 100,000 Chase Ultimate Reward points over to Hyatt, then you can get yourself 3 nights at a really nice Hyatt property. If you transfer over 100,000 American Express membership reward points over to Hilton, when there is a high transfer ratio, you can get yourself 3 nights at some pretty damn good Hilton hotels. They may not be on the exact same level as these Hyatt properties, but they're not that far behind. I guess the conclusion that I've reached when it comes to the World of Hyatt program is that when I look at something like my Chase Ultimate Rewards account, I used to look at that as being what I'm going to be transferring over to Hyatt, but now I don't really look at it that way. In fact, over the last year, there was a few times that I didn't like how I was hesitating when I saw a transfer bonus over to Virgin Atlantic for an ANA booking that I wanted to do with Chase, and I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I want to do this with American Express because I would rather use those points to book flights and then use my Chase points to book with Hyatt only. But I'm not going to give up a 30% transfer bonus with a program like Virgin Atlantic to get myself such an incredible flight just because I like Hyatt. Hyatt still is a really good hotel chain, and I'm very curious to see what their yearly changes are going to look like in March of 2025. Because one thing that I've noticed in 2024 with Hyatt is even though they still are in first place, Hilton isn't that far behind. But hopefully you enjoy this video. Let me know in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts about the World of Hyatt program? Are you still just a complete Hyatt fanboy, or have you looked at them a little bit differently in the last couple years? Now, if you happen to be interested in any cards, check out my referral links in the description box to learn more about them. If you do decide to use any of my links, it does really help out the channel, and I'll be incredibly thankful for your support. And if you happen to have any questions about the World of Hyatt program, drop it down in the comment section down below. I'll do the best I can answer it. And if you happen to really like this video, do me a favor. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, share this video, and have a beautiful rest of your day.